Hello and welcome. My name is Samuel Mendez, and this is my presentation for Eastern University DTS 691 capstone, Modernizing Education, a case for AI integration in K-12 schools. I have been teaching for many years at the high school and middle school level, and in my experience, I have firsthand witnessed all of the challenges that come with teaching. COVID-19 helped highlight a lot of those issues, but the reality is that schools and districts have been dealing with these issues for decades. In this presentation, I hope to educate people on the use and concerns of AI in education and advocate for its immediate integration. Let's begin by talking about some of the challenges of education. Starting with funding. This is the lifeline for many schools and is usually dictated by student enrollment and attendance, not necessarily on student needs. For many countries, political pressure dictates where the funding goes and not necessarily where it's needed. It's no secret that teachers are in high demand. It is forecasted that by 2030, over 30 countries will not have enough teachers to provide every child with primary education. As a result, teachers are spread thin. Creating unit and lesson plans, differentiating instructions for students with IEPs, that's individualized education plans, and 504s, assessing, grading, and managing behavior. Bias has always embedded itself in education through disciplinary action, curriculum, grading, and resource allocation. For example, in my curriculum, constantly have to go back and change questions because they don't fit the demographics of my classroom. For example, a question about golf in our recent unit exam that required the knowledge of what a birdie and a par was did not give students fair access to demonstrate their knowledge of the concept, so it had to be changed. Socioeconomic gap. It is known that some communities experience richer learning because they have more available resources, and in turn that creates an academic gap that is mostly seen through race. COVID-19 helped highlight a lot of the academic and socioeconomic gaps. A Pew Research found that during the pandemic, only 1/5 of students did not have access to a laptop at home, and 1/3 of students had access only to a cell phone to watch their lessons and complete their homework. So, how can we use these new technologies proposed by artificial intelligence to help face some of these challenges in education? Well, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of ideas out there, and I'm sure you maybe thought of one or two during my introduction. While there are some ideas that address systemic issues such as using AI to allocate resources equitably, for this presentation I'm going to focus on the use of AI in the classroom. Let's start by defining AI in education, otherwise known as AIED. Holmes defines it as the application of AI techniques and processes in education, such as machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing, and ethics. And this is the definition that we're going to use for this presentation. Now let's talk about the background of AIED. It has not it is not a recent thing. It has been around for many decades. In fact, in the 1970s, a program called Buggy 15 sought to individualize instructions for students who were learning about addition and subtraction by providing feedback based on the data that contained common misconceptions. It's not until recently that this new technology has just blown up and is expanding exponentially. As a result, tech companies are racing to create the latest technologies and tools without proper guardrails in place that will help prevent the already current challenges that education faces. As of 24, only four as of 2024, only 4 states have guidance on the use of AI in education, and North Carolina is the latest to provide guidance. However, guidance is not policy. And in a survey of 450 schools worldwide, only about 7 schools reported that they have some sort of guidance or policy for their institution. A major concern for a lot of politicians is that new legislation might become outdated way too quick because there's a lack of research that will go into it. Another concern for a lot of people is that education is now a new market that's ready to be exploited by tech companies. The fact is that we are headed towards a future where AI in education is inevitable. President Biden directed the government recently to, and I quote, shape AI's potential to transform education by creating resources to support educators by deploying AI enabled educational tools such as personalized tutoring in school. So we have to ask ourselves, how can we ensure equitable access to AI driven educational tools across different socioeconomic backgrounds? And what safeguards are necessary to ensure fairness and inclusivity in AI driven educational environments, such as the classroom? Let's start by talking about the academic implementations. AIED is a great tool for learning. Intelligent tutoring systems, otherwise known as ITSs, help solve a ton of day-to-day issues in the classrooms for teachers and students, such as the lack of differentiation, one-on-one check-ins, checks for understandings, micro-assessments, temperature checks, dynamic questioning, and specific feedback. ITSs have shown a great promise in increasing student engagement and learning. For example, a newcomer who is having trouble learning a concept about math might use this tool to get a better explanation, maybe in their own language. And this could be during lunch with the teacher or at home with their parents. It is a tool that can be used 24/7. It is a great tool for teaching. I am so excited because I see it like a free personal assistant to create lesson plans a lot faster. We talked about curriculum and how curriculum has to be adjusted to fit the demographics of our students to pique interest. Well, that can be done with generative AI. More efficient grading and feedback. This is super important because student work is not exactly all the same. The reason why a student might have gotten a question wrong differentiates based on student to student. And providing the necessary feedback for students to overcome that challenge is necessary in order to learn. Adaptive curriculum. Like I said, questions have to be adapted constantly in order to fit the needs of our students so they have an accessible way to show that they are learning. And finally, it can be used to predict weak performance in future assessments. By addressing the common misconceptions in previous assessments, teachers can prepare themselves for future classes to know where they have to put most of the attention on so students don't fall into the common pitfalls of these misconceptions. However, without proper guidance and policies in place, it might be tricky to implement AIED. Some universities have had to update their definitions of academic dishonesty to include the use of generative AI in assignments. Some platforms have shown bias may be embedded into their programming, such as disciplinary and monitoring software. Our dependence on this technology might leave us susceptible to cyber attacks, as well as severely impacted by natural things such as blackouts of a bad storm. Finally, in order for this new technology to be impactful, there has to be an immense push towards technological literacy for teachers, administrators, parents, and students, as stated in the North Carolina AI for ED guidebook. Now let's talk about the socio-economic implications. Are we widening or narrowing the gap? Although Khan Academy hopes to one day, and I quote, give every student on the planet an artificially intelligent but amazing personal tutor, Khan Migo is currently $20. In fact, most AIED tools are not free. However, some parents are able to afford such tools for their students. How big will the academic gap grow before every student has equal access to these tools? This question is not specific to AIED. Our curriculum, which comes from an institute that is out in the East Coast, does not necessarily represent and serve the students in Richmond, California, which is where I teach. Another concern is that the AI craze might take away from the already research-backed human interventions that we can use for education, such as the correlation between students attending preschool and then attending college. With the focus of AIED in the classroom, the use of AI can help solve some of the issues with equity and bias. Assessments for a long time have been a one size fits all. However, we have also known that students have different learning styles. Would they not also have different styles to show their learning as well? Testing creates a lot of anxiety for students, and that directly impacts their performance. By personalizing tests, teachers might be able to reduce anxiety and highlight true misconceptions they can address to create meaningful supports for students. Finally, grading. Especially in non-STEM disciplines, grading might be challenging to do consistently with fidelity each time. Teachers are human beings that are filled with emotions at the end of the day and fatigue. So, when I am grading and I see a lot of F's, it might be easier to curve the test to raise grades instead of providing feedback for every single student and then focusing on the misconceptions so they have a second at bat to show mastery on the subject. And this is not on the 99th exam. This is more on like the 15th exam I'm grading between my two classes of AP Pre-Calculus and 7th grade math. AIED can help mitigate some of those issues by providing quick, personalized, and actionable feedback for students and teachers, and this is the important part, without ever needing a name or a demographic. Last but definitely not least, privacy and policy. The federal government, through Executive Order 13960, created the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, which are the first steps towards the federal government's use of AI. And every other industry is soon to follow. For example, as we stated earlier, President Joe Biden is keen on preparing educators to make the most of AI in education. A lot of early guidelines focus on educating the public about ethical uses of AI, as well as the technical use. The guidance also gives information on how to use AI while not violating students' or teachers' privacy. For example, laws like FERPA and IDEA are in place to prevent the spread of student individual privacies. And in the North Carolina AIED guidebook, they state data must be in direct control of the educational institution, which might allow parents, teachers, and administrators to feel more comfortable using AIED. So here's the case for AIED. Despite the lack of current guidance and policy, schools, districts, and states are working fast to create adequate guardrails to effectively implement the use of AI ethically, equitably, and equally. Teaching K-12 is a demanding job and it's not proportionate to the salary, really. Teacher retention rates are low across the country and demand is high. AI provides an avenue for teachers to automate otherwise arduous processes that take hours and don't maximize student learning. Everything from personalized, individualized feedback to translating lessons to up to 50 languages. Students can have an education that focuses on their individual needs and receive supports any time of the day. By being able to personalize curriculum, students will be able to avoid generalization of a static curriculum made for students outside of their culture, economic status, and learning abilities. So why not just replace me and let AIED do everything? Well, we have to think about AIED more so as a tool than as a supplement for a teacher. It is known that at the end of the day, humans require a socio-emotional connection in order to learn, along with feedback. So, let's come back to our essential question. How can we ensure equitable access to AI-driven educational tools across different socioeconomic backgrounds, and what safeguards are necessary to ensure fairness and inclusivity in AI educational environments, such as the classroom? Well, first, policy and education must come quick and it must focus on literacy, equity, and privacy. The government must invest in adequate implementation of such technologies, both materialistically and idealistically, and fund research to address the effect of AID to adjust policy accordingly. Educational institutes must educate teachers and students and parents on the ethical uses of AIED, and frameworks must be created for the ethical use of data collected from AIED as soon as possible to ensure equitable and safe integration. Well, I hope I made my case for the use of AIED in K-12 schools. Thank you for listening. My name is Samuel Mendez, and if you want to follow up, here are my sources.